Hi there. Welcome to today's lesson. I love this lesson. I love talking about PowerPoint, talking about how to make your presentations effective, and also talking about things to avoid so that your presentation doesn't trigger a seizure or leave your audience just very agitated or disturbed, because sometimes adding small components that you think may liven up or add interest to your presentation actually have the opposite effect. So I want to take you through some presentations that I've made. It's a little bit vulnerable to show you, just as you guys have to share your presentations on the discussion board with your peers. I'm going to show you some presentations that I've made and walk you through some of the decisions that I've made so that I can add or at least make my presentations a little bit more digestible. So in the past couple of weeks, we've talked a lot about the information that you're allowed to or that is recommended to put on your slide. There's 100 different rules and regulations regarding recommendations for how much content to put on a slide. There's the 30-point font rule. There's the 8 words per slide rule. And those are all rules, but really recommendations, because at the end of the day, what we want to make sure of is that we're not overwhelming our audience. So we can use some tips from instructional design frameworks to help us reduce what is called cognitive load, or that feeling of overwhelm when you're faced with a lot of information. We can do this through what's called chunking, or breaking up our content into small bits. Well, how do you chunk a presentation? Well, luckily, the presentation is chunked by default already because we have slides. Every single slide is in itself a chunk of information, because you wouldn't put all of your information on one slide. Actually, that's wrong. I've had several instructors in my undergraduate career to do just that. So how do we further chunk our slides so that it's not cognitively overwhelming, so that our audience isn't trying to do this whole back and forth tug of war, like, should I pay attention to the speaker? Should I look at the slide? Should I read something? Should I do something else? Like, I don't know what to do as an audience member. So how can we help them? Well, we help them through transitions, animations, charts, and art. Okay, so like we noted in week 1, a presentation is a visual enhancement of information. It is not the information itself. That's actually your job. You're presenting information to your audience. So how can we leverage transitions, animations, smart art, images to convey information without overwhelming our audience? Okay, so I just want to open up a couple of things here. I'm just going to minus this down, and you'll see I've got 2 slides open. We'll take a look first at, this is actually my dissertation defense. And you'll notice that, let's just look at the second slide here. There's a lot of information on your screen, okay? There's a lot going on. There's images, there's a box here, there's a bunch of statistics. So without transitions or animations, this would look really overwhelming to my audience, because if you notice, what's your eye being pulled to first? Probably that image at the top of the slide, this header image here. But what do I need my audience to focus on? Well, I'm able to manipulate or control or direct, if I want to use a softer verb, I'm able to direct my audience's attention to a particular component of the slide. So let's look at this slide. So when my slide pulls up, I see here that automatically we have a couple of options. So I'm going to go back here. So first of all, my image pops up on its own. So my audience knows, okay, we're getting ready to move into a secondary portion of the presentation. So my next trigger is my problem of practice. So I am needing my audience to focus on what question my dissertation is going to answer. Okay, so we have here also 3 different elements listed on the screen. The 70% of STEM jobs require a bachelor's degree, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so we notice that something is missing from this slide element. So if I click again, I'm able to answer using my problem statement. Okay, so I'm able to really determine what my audience is looking at through animation. Well, I've lost it. There we are. Okay, same for, let's look at something else. in the presentation or in the lesson, you'll learn about different charts. Okay, so let's look at this chart. So this chart is actually displaying a ton of information. In my dissertation, I had originally used a table, and this table had like 20 different rows across 3 different columns. There was a lot of numbers going on, and it was really hard to discern what the information was conveying, like what was the purpose of the information. So let's look at how we can leverage a chart to communicate information, but then take it a step further and leverage animations applied to chart elements to really help my audience concentrate on a single piece of information. So we see here, this is the chart in its totality. So we have the chart title, we have the chart information, we have 3 different colors here designating, X, Y, or Z. So let's play this slide. So automatically, I want my audience to know what I'm getting ready to talk about. So I'm going to display the chart title and the chart background, as well as the 3 indicators that my chart is going to include. Okay, so I'm going to set it up here. So in my presentation, I'm going to say, when we distributed the survey, we collected some answers, and these answers, this is the summary of those answers. Okay, so in my first animation, I'm going to use the case. Okay, so my audience is able to visually see which questions or which prompts my respondents answered to, high to low. So it was a 6-point scale, so you could answer from 0 to 6 based on your comfort level. And you'll notice that maybe item 2 here looks to be a little bit lower than the rest. So most people answered pretty high on these particular prompts. So, I can look around and quickly glance to see, okay, maybe prompt 2 needed some attention. There's something going on with prompt 11, prompt 13. Each of those 3 items, the respondents answered a little bit lower than normal, or compared to the rest of the prompts. So in my next animation, I'm going to pull up just my site 1. So now I'm looking at one particular group of people here, and I notice that they fall in line. So let's compare blue to orange. So I'm able to easily see kind of where my site 1 participants fell in this questionnaire. I'm able to do that because the blue is very easy to distinguish. I'm able to see, okay, most of the people answered in the 5.5 to 6 range. But when I look at orange, that one particular group of people, I'm able to see how that particular group compares to the case as a whole. So my third animation is going to bring up that third section of information. This is my second site. So I'm able to visually distinguish very quickly that, wait a minute, something is going on in my second site. Because if you notice here, look at how much higher site 2 was compared to site 1. That's a pretty dramatic difference. Let's look at 13. Prompt 13 also had a very dramatic difference between the responses. So site 1 responded in one way, site 2 responded in a different way. But the important thing here is I wouldn't be able to see that difference if I had just presented a table of numbers, because these numbers are not statistically all that significant, because we would have like some 3.7s, some 5.5s, and so like to us, just to hear like 3.7 versus 5.5, like just to hear that statistic, it's not all that significant. But to see it in a visual, and I'm looking here at prompt 13 specifically, I'm able to see very quickly, wow, there's something going on. So maybe I can dig deeper into that prompt 13. My audience is able to also see that distinguishing characteristic. So when we're talking about displaying information, talking about how to help our audience visualize, charts are an excellent way to do that. And when we add animations onto the chart, we're able to really direct our audience's focus to a particular statistic or a particular piece of information. Okay, so let's go back to another area. Okay, so here we have, this is just a graph. So here we have some implications. So an implication slide is just basically kind of, so what now? Like, what did we learn from this study? And if I were to just display this particular slide without any sort of animations any sort of anything, then the audience would be trying to figure out like what's going on here with this particular graphic or this visual aid. And I'm not able to really rally together the focus or the emphasis of this presentation. So let's look at this slide in action. So here we've got our image, we have our title, so our audience knows kind of what's getting ready to go on. So what are the implications for instructional design for this particular slide? So in my first thing, I'm going to talk about interface. Interface is just like where you're clicking in a particular area. Maybe we're using D2L, we're using PowerPoint, those are all interfaces. And I can talk about what the implications are for the interface, what my study showed. So again, I am helping my audience focus or target a specific point that I'm trying to make. Their eyes and ears are on me because this is the only thing on the screen. I'm going to cover the interface point entirely and then I'm going to move on. So when I click next, my animation is going to appear a secondary subject. So now I'm going to talk about the content and the cognitive processing of information. How much content am I showing? What kinds of content? What kind of diversification am I getting at? All of that information. And notice that again, I am helping pace my presentation. So let's go again. I'm going to click again. My third bubble is going to come up. I'm going to talk about engagement, student to student engagement, student to instructor engagement, talking about all of these cornerstones that focus just on engagement. My audience knows that I'm talking about engagement because that was the last thing to display to them. Okay, and so then we take a step back and I need to call out one particular element of this this graphic. And so in my final animation, I'm going to circle it. I'm going to say, okay, well, wait a minute. Let's talk about right here in the center where all three of these things intersect. What's important about that element? And I can add my final animation to say, well, here we feel like, emotional and sociocultural integration, emotional support, emotional interaction, emotional reaction. This is what is important. These are the implications for instructional design, is really taking account to what is the emotional impact of the content being displayed to the learner, what is the sociocultural impact and connection of the content being displayed. So I'm able to really hone in on a particular area. And that would not be the case if this slide just presented itself without any sort of animation. But let's take a step back. What did you notice? Hold on. And here we have, of course, some animations here too. But what do you notice? So I'm just going to click through here. There's nothing revolutionary about this animation, right? What's revolutionary is the important information that you're conveying in your presentation. You're not trying to wow them. You're not a huge movie director or person. You're not a visual effects artist, or you're not a digital creator, or maybe you are, I don't know. But the point of your presentation is to inform, persuade, or demonstrate. You're not trying to wow them with some very elaborate animation that's coming in or out. Instead, you're looking at how can I pace information? How can I keep my audience focused on something? Okay, so let's go back here. So I want to show you one other thing here, just to again highlight some different options. Okay, so one of the things that I focus on in the lesson is using smart art. And smart art can be sometimes when you're using smart art, and of course it's up here on the insert thing in the smart art, when you just look at it, it can appear kind of cartoonish. It looks really bubbly or something like this, but you can utilize these smart art options to be inspired by a slide design. Okay, so this slide here is not a smart art that I picked from the smart art list. But in trying to decide what I was going to display, I looked and I thought, I kind of like this whole column approach, right? I have 4 themes. I could have easily went with this 4 picture caption here, but I wanted them to be, I wanted a more column effect. So I chose 4 different images. And notice again, in the lesson, I thought, I need something that's going to visually diversify the information. I need to not use that landscape rectangular orientation. I want to flip it up on its side. I want them to be consistent, but I want to pace my audience. So again, with the pacing, this is very important here because I need to pace. So if I play here, I'm going to go back here. Actually, I want to show you something else. So also, I'm using shapes. Okay? This is nothing revolutionary. This is a black rectangle. This is another black rectangle. These are not hard or sophisticated shapes. But if you look, they're just adding some visual interest to the slide so that when I play this slide, I've got my slides coming up, or I got my shapes coming up, and I'm going to set this up for the audience. Okay, we're going to talk about emerging themes. What emerged when I performed this study? So when I click, I'm going to do one at a time. So again, pacing, having my information show up one at a time. Now, I chose a more emphatic animation here. And again, I'm just clicking. It's showing up, very easing in, nothing too disturbing or like animated, anything like that, just easing in and having these things paced just so that we can really get a sense of how is the audience paying attention to me? What is the information that is being delivered? Okay, so again, really leverage, because this slide is just a collection of the shapes. Just insert shape. Okay, so put that black rectangle up there, have it slide in from the top very, very subtly, nothing distracting or too outrageous. And then my themes, I have pictures that reinforce the idea. I have text that reinforces the idea, and I'm going to be helping my audience pace through the use of animation. Okay, so that's just something to think about. So don't be bound, because a lot of times students will read the lesson and they'll say, well, a lot of the resources that Dr. Dubé shared said that to not use bullet points. So how in the world am I going to use, how can I convey information without using bullet points? Well, this is great. This could have easily been a title and content slide with 4 bullet points. But when we're talking about the purpose of the presentation, the purpose of the PowerPoint presentation is to add visual interest. 4 bullet points is not visually interesting. It's just not. I don't care how many colors, bolds, italicized, I don't care what kind of text effects do you put on that. It's not visually interesting. So let's flip the script and take away those bullet points, take away being bound by bullet points, and really try to think about how can I display information in a visually appealing way, but also help my audience pace. And the answer is animations, and inventive and creative uses of imagery. Okay, so I look forward to seeing your presentations. I can't wait to see what you've come up with, and let's get going. Good luck.